Comparing the experience of gaming back then versus now is like comparing apples to oranges. It's changed exponentially in the past few decades from how we play games with friends to how we even decide on a game to play. It's become somewhat of a double-edged sword having such a variety in games to play in the modern age. Although gaming is more accessible than ever, we've become skeptical as consumers and jaded with sifting through the endless choices to pick a game to play. So why exactly do we sometimes feel like the never-ending choices to play something feels like there's actually nothing for you to play? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Anna. I'm a variety gamer who's been gaming for over 20 years. Today's topic is something that I've been meaning to talk about for a while now. So if you kept up with my socials or my content recently, you know that I've been playing a lot of really cool indie games. I played stuff like Arctic Eggs, Mouthwashing, Europa, Side, Curse Digicam, Hapunan. So yeah, I've been playing a lot of cool indie games lately, and one of the common questions I get when I go on this run of just playing a bunch of cool indie games that are sometimes pretty obscure is, how do you find all these games to play? Where do you find all these recommendations? And I can honestly kind of just go over the games that I just mentioned and how I found them. So with Side, I was recommended it to me on Steam. Curse Digicam, I've just followed Chilla's art for a while now. Arctic Eggs, I got recommended by a former coworker. Mouthwashing kind of just blew up. I saw all the content creators playing it. Europa, I saw on Twitter being marketed as like a single dev project. And then Hapunan, I had recommended by a fellow content creator in the gaming space. And as I started to think about how I personally find all the games that I play, I started to think that I have it pretty easy compared to the average person. I'm obviously a content creator in the gaming space, so I have just a lot of people recommend games to me to play. I have fellow content creator friends in the space. I worked in gaming, so I just have a lot of past coworkers and just friends that game a lot. So yeah, I would say that I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I have more than enough games to play when it comes to people throwing recommendations at me, because I just have so many different sources to go to when it comes to games to play. Then I started to think that the way we find our games to play has really changed and evolved over the past 2 decades. So I posted this video back in October of 2024 about me just yapping about the evolution of video games that I can just play here. As someone who has been playing video games their whole life, I think about this kind of often, and I think people who are in their like late 20s, early 30s, give or take, will understand what I'm getting at here. But if you're around this age range and you played video games your whole life, I don't think there was a better era for you to be born in to enjoy gaming. You were old enough to enjoy classic titles and older consoles like Pokemon on the Game Boy in real time. Like, these were the latest consoles you could buy, while being young enough that these experiences, these gaming experiences, became core childhood memories for you. And with that, you have this like appreciation for the evolution of gaming and technology when you play video games today, because you get to compare that experience from like 20 years ago to what gaming is today. Sometimes I do wonder if like a 10-year-old can really appreciate what gaming is today with its like insane graphics, because they literally didn't exist when games looked like crap. And I'm not saying the young gamers right now can't go and play SM64, play the classic titles. I'm just saying I feel lucky to have lived through that era as it was happening in real time, and lived through an era where if I played a popular game back then, it had a high likelihood of being known to be a classic today. Being able to compare the two experiences of like gaming in the 90s and the 2000s to what gaming is today makes me personally appreciate gaming so much more. The Zoomers are gonna watch this and be like, you're just coping because you're getting old, but this is actually how I feel. And that video went pretty viral on Instagram in particular. It has 1.9 million views and over 6,000 comments. And this video is still getting comments today. And the TLDR of it is, of course, that I appreciate gaming a lot more today, thanks to the fact that I experienced gaming as a kid before it had this rapid technological boom and advancement within the gaming industry. Obviously, a lot of people resonated what I was saying in the video. And honestly, when I looked through the comments of this video, there's honestly multiple conversation points that could be 10 other video essays, but I do want to focus on a particular topic, and I want to particularly focus on the ones that are lamenting how gaming was back then versus how it is now. So I see comments such as, "This is a great era to be a gamer, but at the same time, I miss the pre-digital plug and play era. No patches, no battle pass, no DLC, just a complete experience out of the box. Real, I also miss people just experiencing games without the internet putting out guides and walkthroughs. It was all word of mouth or hearing about it at school. I have to avoid the internet when a new game I want to play comes out because people had to post everything about it. Boomerang, I absolutely hate the decline of physical media. A lot of games aren't being physically released the same day the game comes out. Also, there is such a high amount of content now. Back then, having just a handful of games was a big deal, so I had to choose wisely. Those that would play would have memories playing the same titles and would be easy to talk about. Now it's such a huge variety, the niches are relatively small. There was something special about getting to go to a Blockbuster on Friday night and rent a game for a weekend. Then if the game was good enough, ask for it for Christmas and physically own it. True, but also we are at the stage now when games take 4 to 8 years to produce and they are releasing in a horrible unfinished state full of bugs and glitches, unoptimized and lack of soul. Huge push towards online, live service, and microtransactions. We were pretty at the top when Xbox 360 came out and PS3. After that, games started degrading. Graphics getting better, yeah, but games losing their souls. Not every game, of course. So yeah, I would say that a lot of the comments I received were just like comparing the then versus now. Also, as a side note, I resonate with that last portion of that last comment I read where, you know, not every game is bad. And personally, I don't think gaming is like dead or gaming sucks right now. I've actually had a lot of fun playing video games in the last 2 years, but I do understand that when we look at all the available games there are to play these days, I look at the pool of all the available games to play in a much more different way compared to back then because of the evolution of how there's such a variety of games and such a difference in quality across all the different games that are out there. So first, let's just talk about what finding a game back then was like. And this is obviously coming from a personal perspective of me when I was a kid in the 2000s. And this was the era before YouTube was even a thing, a little after YouTube was just a thing. And the concept of streamers and content creators for gaming wasn't really a thing yet. So I would personally just walk through a local GameStop or a Best Buy, and that was like really fun for me. I would just like looking at all the different games on display, and I would choose things basically based on just their art and aesthetic and if it looked cool. I would also go to a lot of those like super electronic department stores that are big in Japan. I used to visit my family in Japan a lot, and those trips would be an excuse for me to go to those like mega stores, and I would get a lot of video games that way. That was like basically Disneyland for me. As a kid, I don't think I was super concerned with the level of quality when it came to a gaming experience when I was picking out the games to play. I don't think I looked at a single review when it came to purchasing games that I enjoyed as a kid. I think my criteria for buying a game was if it looked cool, what was popular, and what my friends were playing at school or something. And I would say I bought games sparingly compared to now because they were more seen as like a luxury gift for me as a kid. You know, I would say that my parents didn't necessarily spoil me with games, and I didn't have a big enough allowance to buy games myself. So the times that I would be able to get games was when I literally begged for them if I really, really wanted a game. If I was on a trip to Japan, because, you know, I think that parents are just a little bit more flexible in buying their kids gifts when they're on a trip. And of course, during the holidays and my birthdays. And because I didn't purchase games super often, I would say the games that I did play really stuck with me because one, I would really invest my time in them. And two, I knew they were gifts that weren't to be taken for granted. So now let's think about how finding a game to play and purchasing a game is like now. And this is obviously from the perspective of me as a fully grown adult with their own money to spend. These days, discoverability for games is so varied now. I could pick up a game based on a viral TikTok that I saw. I'll see game review sites and journalists talk about big releases as they publish all their reviews and scores as an upcoming game is about to come out. I'll see what the big streamers and content content creators on YouTube and Twitch are playing, and very often those games are also very trendy amongst my friend groups. And of course, Steam is also a big platform for me to discover the games that I play. I also want to talk about purchasing online versus offline in the present day. The decline of physical media is undeniable. I think we all find it so easy to just purchase, click, download a game onto our PCs and consoles now compared to going to our local electronics store to buy games. And the fact that you can just download games right at midnight release is obviously a factor to the decline of physical media as well. We don't have to line up at our local electronics store to buy games anymore. We don't have to wait for games to arrive in the mail for us to immediately play it upon release. And personally, I have noticed that within my own purchasing behavior that I've grown to be quite the cynical consumer, that I don't really often buy games without looking up reviews for it online. I think just the natural course of gaming for so long, you kind of start developing an eye for games that maybe seem like they're over-promising something, that it might look like a bloated experience. There's so many different factors that go into maybe not trusting the promised experience. So obviously having to look up reviews and stuff is a factor for me to be a little bit more reluctant to just pick up something off the shelf at the local Best Buy, and why online purchasing has become even more convincing in that way. And there's so many games now. There's just so many. There are a ton of different variety of games, both cheap and expensive. There's like hundreds of games that come out on Steam every week, and they are of varying quality. They could be indie games or they can be AAA $60 games. I think we can all relate to having a huge Steam library. A lot of the times we will purchase games from a Steam sale and just have it in our backlog, not touching it, and it's just sitting in your Steam library because it was cheap and you're like, why not? I'll get to it eventually. And because we have so many different ways to play games now, games are just more accessible than ever. If you wanted to play on a console, PC, play on Steam, another storefront, get games for free, get games for $5, get games for $20. So bringing this all together, comparing to what it means to purchase a game back then versus now, I came to a conclusion that these infinite choices for games has led to decision fatigue for many people. And then I started to question further, has this decision fatigue led to the narrative that games aren't good anymore? In my 2024 wrap-up video going over all the games that I played last year, I got this comment that reads, "Let me put it this way, if you feel 2024 is weak, I don't think this hobby interests you anymore. There was an embarrassment of phenomenal games across all genres and price points. Hell, there's more great games from 2024 than there is time to play them." And I replied to this comment, "Valid, I think people who think gaming isn't interesting anymore aren't digging hard enough for the gems." To which that person replied, "Yeah, and there's been a rash of video games are dead or video games aren't good anymore from people who are doing exactly what you just said, refusing to actually look around or dig for the gems everyone else is finding. If all you play are online multiplayer shooters and AAA games and you get burned out, expand your gaming tastes." So while I initially agreed, and I also think that there's an extent of open-mindedness required from the consumer to try new games out, I started to think, is the blame entirely on the consumer for the lack of interest in the hobby/gaming, or are the systems set in place to blame? Let's just think about how people get you to buy a game today. We'll take a storefront such as Steam, for example. So if I walk through my Steam front page right now, I would say that everything is pretty much based on an algorithm or money. So at the very top, I see games like Lost Ark, Cyberpunk, Monster Hunter Wilds, and I would say that these games are a mix of, games that I honestly might pick up, and they're mostly from pretty big publishers, I would say. I scroll down and I see sections such as recommended based on the games you play, and then I see a section that says because you played Tales of Symphonia, and then I see a section that says from developers and publishers that you know, and then I see a bunch of games that are just based on how well they're selling right now, such as new and trending, top sellers, popular upcoming. So yeah, to sum it up, when you look through Steam, everything is based on an algorithm based on what you have expressed interest in, or it's pretty much real estate bought out by bigger publishers that have the money to do so. Or it's a combination of both, where they look for games that, you know, line up with your interests, but also are doing really well and had just released, so they're on those lists such as top selling or new and trending. A lot of publishers and people who have worked with Steam will agree that Steam has evolved to become a social media platform. It's not just a storefront anymore. Just like Instagram, it's based on an algorithm and it takes in your interests and what you've purchased before to recommend you different games. Major publishers, AAA games, and studios with a lot of money will take up a lot of real estate on like the front page or pages with a lot of traffic, obviously because they have the money to do so. So in other words, games with a lot of money will take over their competitors, even if those games look like shit. I think this is a reason why we see games like Catly take up a prominent ad slot at something like the Game Awards, even when that game looks like absolute AI slop. If you don't have the money to be prominently featured on Steam, you're looking to be picked up by the algorithm. And to be discovered on Steam and to be blessed by the Steam algorithm, there's actually a lot of work that goes into putting up your game on Steam. As someone who worked in games marketing in the past, I really started to see just how much work goes into optimizing your Steam page and hoping to be picked up by the algorithm. You have to hire professional artists when it comes to creating your capsule art. You have to optimize your tags based on what kind of game you're making and the different games within your genre. You have to learn how to copyright so you have an interesting hook and a unique factor compared to the hundreds of other games within your genre. You have to make a trailer that's specific for Steam, because if you notice, if you ever browsed games on Steam, you're looking for gameplay trailers and you don't really care about cinematics and all that jazz, so now you're a video editor. And then you have to optimize demos so people will actually play your game before purchasing it, and then you have to think about optimizing that demo so you can opt into game festivals such as Steam Next Fest, so you get even more of an algorithm boost before you can release your game. And then you should probably be a community manager to an extent by posting updates about your game in the community section and keeping up with that as well. And then of course, this is just Steam. Now you have to think about marketing off the platform. You got to make content, you got to market yourself on TikTok. So yes, if we're talking about small dev teams or even single dev teams that don't really have the money to market themselves, nowadays gamifying Steam to be discovered and get people to play your game is just as important as making a good game in the first place. And even if you make a good game, that still might not be enough. I saw this TikTok the other day and it reads, "The crazy thing about working as a game developer full time, you pour your heart, soul, and savings into a project for years, but 66% of all Steam games end up with a lifetime income of less than $5,000. 40 plus games get released on Steam every day, all while you can get Stardew on sale for $5 and play it for 200 hours. The entire industry feels like it's one card away from the whole house collapsing sometimes. Then you see people buying $65 Valorant gun skins." So I would say in the comments that there is a little bit of a mixed reception based on what was being said. I think a lot of people are saying just make a good game, but I think people misconstrued a little bit what the OP was trying to say. So I see comments that say Unk makes slop and cries, maybe make something that stands out. Maybe if all new indie games weren't about cozy witch making friends with romance option, maybe they would stand out. 99% of indie games are shovelware. Great games stand out, mediocre vanity projects fail, and shovelware goes nowhere. There are hidden games that are great, but most games in the 66% failed for a reason. They are overused ideas, bad mechanics, glitches, etc. The amount of Animal Crossing farming games is unreal. So I get what these comments are trying to say, but I think they kind of missed the point that OP was trying to say, and OP goes on to clarify their point further. So I see the creator replying, "This video is about the countless unique indies that go under the radar." I see in reply to this comment that reads, "Most indie games are actually either pet projects, asset flips, or uninspired clones of more successful indie games, TBH. I think this is definitely true by the numbers. There are also a metric shit ton of NSFW games going on Steam daily. I do still think there are too many quality games that go under the radar though." And then I see the comments that really understand what OP was trying to communicate. "I'm obsessed with people thinking that you just have to make a good game to stand out. Like obviously it's a big part, but it discounts marketing, timing, luck, market demographics. People who say things like sure AAA gaming is falling off, but indie games is better than ever, don't realize that the level of competition for indie games makes it almost impossible to make a reasonable amount. You either blow up or stay unknown. Make a good game, just make something different. I'm sure there's a lot of different games that still get ignored because they don't have a lot of reviews or are on the main page." So in summary, I think the OP is trying to say you can make a really good game, but just lack of money and not being able to gamify the algorithms and getting yourself out there will make it so your game is just not discovered and played by anyone. Because 40 Steam games come out a day, many of them AI games, shovelware with how easily companies pump out games these days, other publishers can just buy their way into the competition, even if their game is worse than yours. And then you gotta market yourself to be discovered. Even if you suck at marketing, that's gonna be your downfall. It kind of reminds me of that sound that was trending on art TikTok a few years ago.
Hi, I'm a small business owner, and unfortunately that means I have to be a content creator, so here's the content.
The same sentiment being that, marketing has become just as important as producing the art or the product itself. And the people who are doing it with a small team or lack of funding or just doing it by themselves are struggling the most, obviously. Now let's put these systems to practice and think of a hypothetical scenario of how I might purchase a game. Let's say that I got a $60 gift card for Steam on Christmas, and my thought process could realistically go like this. I don't feel like blowing the gift card on a AAA title that's on the front page of Steam. I want to look for something a little bit more unique. I find a game that seems promising, but it's a gacha game or a game that's filled with microtransactions, which nothing wrong with playing those types of games if that's what you're into, but if you follow me and my content and the types of game I play, you know that that's not really my jam, so I'm gonna pass on that. I find another game, but now I'm suspicious on its art assets. Now I feel the need to look up the extent of how much AI was involved. I sift through the Steam discovery queue and I'm just overwhelmed at the amount of games there are to choose from. A couple of them maybe catch my eye, but I'm not completely sold on it yet. I look up YouTube videos and subreddits to affirm my choices because, again, I'm the type of cynical consumer where maybe the top Steam reviews aren't enough to convince me quite yet. I maybe even ask someone in real life what their personal review of this game is because I want to go to someone and get real insight from someone I trust to have taste. After this exercise, it's no wonder that gaming consumers are just being burnt out on the process of purchasing a game. In summary, when people say games aren't good anymore, while I can acknowledge there's some blame on the consumer for maybe not willing to try out new games, new genres, new things, aka put in the work, I do think there's blame on the overall capitalistic evolution of what it means to find and buy a good game to play. So I've just hit you with capitalism, baby, as the reason for why many people might think that games suck now. So why does this matter? Why is any of this worth bringing up? Besides the point I brought up that it's acknowledging it's many times not the art that's the problem, but the systems in place, I'm reminded again of the methods that I explained at the very beginning of this video of how I find my games to play. The methods of how I find my games and the solution to finding hidden gems to play can really be summed up to community. Personally, being more intentional about building my community through content creation has allowed me to not only discover good games, but also connect with others and practice open-mindedness when it comes to trying out new things. My taste in games has evolved so much since I started creating content and being more intentional with playing games. Indie games that I would have never tried out maybe 5 years ago are some of my favorites now. And because I have my own systems set in place for me to find games to play, gaming continues to be just as fun for me today as it was back then. My point is, you have all the power in the world to make games fun for you and yourself again. Sure, things have changed with the course of time, but I think it really just boils down to figuring out what makes gaming fun for you. Explore new genres to learn more about your preferences, learn what you like and dislike. Go to locals and events if gaming experiences IRL is what makes gaming fun for you. Go make that TikTok about this game you're really into. Tell your friends and family about it. Buy physical media and consoles and maybe pass them down to your future kids. Recreate environments that made gaming fun for you back then. Hell, I even know about this one friend group that decided to buy a bunch of old Xboxes and get together in one room and start playing Halo together because they were just looking for that nostalgic LAN experience. Also, as a side note, you are never too old to play and try out new games. I played my first Final Fantasy game last year. And please, please, please don't let anybody think that you are too old to just enjoy gaming as a hobby. I absolutely hate it when people bring people down for thinking that they're immature for enjoying gaming as an adult. I think rather than feel defeated by the overall profit-motivated industry that's based on a lot of algorithms, it's actually more important than ever to hold on to the things that made gaming special for us back then and to make it a point to keep those things alive. That's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Quick update for for you guys, I just wanted to say that I have a second YouTube channel now that's going to focus more on gameplay and let's play videos. So the types of content that I've been uploading lately that's more like long form gameplay, those kind of videos are going to be going up on the second channel instead. And this channel is going to focus a little bit more on commentary and these types of videos. And I'm hoping to do some new formats video series soon, so please stay tuned for that. I hope you guys have a lovely day and thank you again for watching. Bye.